almost no like marketing and go-to-market leaders recognize yet that the CRM data and the architecture is actually the core problem. Solving that is the number one priority, not buying another tool, not going out and switching from demand-based to 6sense, not buying a signal aggregator. All that stuff is nice at the top, but if we can't measure it and we can't make decisions against it because our CRM data sucks, then in a year, we're going to spend couple $100,000 on a new tool and really have no idea on the impact, except for did our pipeline and revenue go up, which is not a good way to evaluate whether an expensive tool like that is being deployed and used. For this event, I'm putting a flag in the ground. We're going to call it the Unified Go-to-Market Show. It's going to encompass everything that I'm focused on: RevOps, marketing, SDRs, sales. The people that have attended this event over the past couple of weeks or even like a couple of months now recognize that we're going in all these different directions that don't fall into some easily existing category. And so it's like really going to be encompassing of a lot of things. And thinking about it, when I use the word unified, I use it intentionally. Like we need to be thinking about when we look at our go-to-market strategy as a unified unit of all these different departments, when historically it's really been about micro optimizations inside of siloed departments and analytics. So that is the purpose of that the show. I'm going to host it every single Tuesday. We're going to be able to go in a bunch of different directions. And then I'm working with Refine Labs specifically and organizing a lot of events that are very demand and marketing oriented. So the next one coming up is with Natalie Mercurio on March 26th with Natalie. That's going to be on building an advisor program. So she's done some great work on that. We're going to talk through and try and learn some things from her on what she's done there. And then in April, we have Chrissy and Charlie from CS2. Some people have been really giving a lot of great feedback on the podcast and the practical application of that specific episode. So we're going to be hosting a live event, slides, a lot of stuff focused on marketing and revenue operations and setting up this infrastructure in place. That'll happen in April. Then we got Pep Laja, who's a good friend of mine and also based in Austin, for May. And he's going to be covering using ongoing customer research to optimize your messaging. His product and company do that, but it's something that we've used at many of my companies. I know a lot of people are using that as a way to get more target market insights. And then lastly, we're going to have Kyle Coleman in June, closing out our Q2 event series, all focused on how to use AI both in marketing and in sales. And so stay tuned for all of those. We're going to have a ton of great events. Sidney will drop some links in here to register for the ones that you think are most relevant to you or you want to have on your calendar as an option to attend. So feel free to do that. And then this event will happen, that we're on right now, will happen every single Tuesday. So if you're signed up, hopefully the calendar invite is still on your calendar so you can attend if you want. The promised topic today, and what I made in my post, I said this morning that I think that signal-based selling is the future of B2B go-to-market. And here's the rationale as to why. In about 2015 to now, it's been really about account-based marketing, account-based sales, account-based experience, account-based engagement, whatever like terminology you want to go with it. It's been very account-based. Account-based is focused on finding the right fit of company. And so you have the right fit of a company. And so before that time, B2B companies and marketing teams would just generate a bunch of leads from companies that were not qualified and could never buy from them and got credit for those MQLs. The movement to account-based put a lot more scrutiny on collecting the right type of people and trying to integrate more with sales. And where we are right now with signal-based selling is people recognizing some of the things that I've seen in the data for a long period of time, which is that it's not only about the right fit of account, but it's about the right time to engage them, which is based on their intent signals. And so in the future, we're going to have filters and only be talking to the right fit accounts. And then we're going to have the signals that those accounts and the people inside of those accounts are sending us in terms of their intent. And then we will take action, sales actions, to try and get meetings and pipeline and things based on the intent signals from the filtered out target list of accounts. And then you have both. You have the right fit of accounts, and then you're going to optimize with data around what is the right time or what are the right signals to be reaching out to them. And then further downstream, we're going to have right message. But it's hard to make the right message if you're not doing it at the right time based on the right signal. So if you think about it as a thing, right fit, next we're going to focus on right time. And then in the future, it's going to be right thing or right message. And so in this thing, as we think about the future of B2B go-to-market, it's going to be account-based. It already is. And if it's not at your company, it needs to be. You should have all of your target accounts inside of your CRM, their data. I don't care if it's 50 accounts or millions of accounts. Those should all be tagged. You should have their website. They should be tracked inside of your CRM. There is infinite amount of data to be able to get that done. Then it's going to be signal-based. So account-based, signal-based, and deeply integrated. Those are the top three things that are going to happen in B2B go-to-market. You have account-based. Signal-based is it's no longer about leads. It is about signals that qualified accounts send us and qualified people send us. And the same person can send us hundreds of signals about their intent, and it's about figuring out what are the signals that matter. So it's no longer about the lead or the person. It's about the signal that those people or accounts are sending us. And then lastly, deeply integrated, which I've been pushing for a long time, and there's going to need to be some work to be done to try and get it there, but to have marketing, sales, SDRs, sales and account management, customer success, working as an integrated unit with analytics that are viewed at a top level across all departments to be able to make the right decisions and how to actually facilitate integration between the teams rather than siloed departments. Those are the places where it's going. When we think about specifically on the signal-based selling point, and I talk about the reason that companies can't do this is because they use a lead-based process in their CRM, which means that a person becomes a lead. It is expected to be a linear process, and there's going to be lead, MQL, SQL, opportunity, customer. And whenever a lead doesn't make it all the way to customer, they end up being recycled. And then eventually they might come back again as another lead, and all the data from the first time that we engage will go away. It'll be overwritten inside of the CRM because they use a lead object that's built to track a person, but instead trying to track multiple journeys and multiple signals from it. And so the solution that we've presented, CS2 has done great work on this. My company, Passetto, Sidney and Trevor have been doing great work on this as well. And there are a lot of other companies that are working on it to set up the CRM to track signals that happen from people and accounts, and those become the core way that you're looking at it instead of tracking the lead. You still use the lead object, you still use these types of things, but we need a different level to track the actual signal so that when you think about an enterprise account-based sort of motion, that if you only have 200 accounts, and there's only a set of people that are going to be in there, then your sales team is going to be taking action and engaging at those accounts all the time. And if they're taking consistent actions on those and you're getting consistent signals before you're actually going to get pipeline and revenue, it means that all that stuff just gets overwritten over and over in the data. You just have last conversion source on the lead, and they go through, and then they convert on a different way, and that data gets overwritten, and they go through. And it makes it impossible to do signal-based selling because you don't actually have the data about all of the signals where you lost, where you weren't successful. And so there's some CRM architecture, signal-based architecture that goes into this. And then there's some mindset thinking. Another core point on this is when we think about what is multi-touch attribution. What is multi-touch attribution doing? It is just tracking a progression of discrete signals that your buyer sends you. They opened your email, they came to your website, they downloaded that content, they filled out the demo request, they opened your SDR email, they accepted the meeting invite. Whatever those things are that multi-touch attribution is measuring is just connecting a bunch of discrete signals. And so understanding that when you look at that entire customer journey, that you could have sales take action on any of those discrete signals. And so why are we waiting until this specific point? That's an interesting sort of question to ask yourself. I think that many companies have subjectively decided that, oh, we're not going to reach out to a qualified account or a person inside of that account until they MQL score or until they submit a demo request or something like that. And in reality, there's a lot of potential intent signals that you could actually action your sales team on and then have the data about whether those are productive or not. And then the last part I want to talk through is that when it comes to the sales outreach, that's not driven by what's known now as a marketing MQL, like sales doing their own outreach or SDRs doing their own outreach, right now is absolutely not tracked. Zero. We've analyzed enough companies to see no companies tracking it to know that almost the entire market is not doing this. And so let's just pretend that you get 30% of your pipeline from what you would consider marketing, and then you get 70% of your pipeline from what you would consider sales. That means that 70% of your pipeline and potentially revenue that you don't actually understand what is the intent signals your buyer is sending you that are actually getting that into pipeline. And that gap in data, specifically in outbound, makes it absolutely impossible to optimize your outbound strategy. You have no idea what are the things that are working and what are the things that aren't. As marketers, we've been thinking about this for a decade, right? We've been thinking about, okay, we need the data. We need a lot of data points. We need to be able to analyze it so that we can, change our ad budget or change how we invest here or things like that. On the sales side, nobody's thought about that. There are like emerging firms that are just starting to think about outbound optimization. For the most part, no companies are tracking the data, therefore not able to optimize anything. So it's a guessing game about how much headcount should we have. They try to put a financial model together to justify it when it should be, we do all these things that don't work. Let's stop doing them. How many people is it required to do all this stuff that doesn't work? We don't need those people anymore. And here are all the things that we do that work. And actually, we're not doing enough of it. So we need 6 more people that do this type of work based on these signals. Being able to get it to that level of granularity, I think, is critically important. And the first step is recognizing that you don't have it and you need it. It's interesting as I think through this and have started my company Paceto and have started talking about a lot of these new concepts, I am back at the problem awareness phase. This is not lead gen to demand gen anymore, where in 2019, nobody knew about lead gen, demand gen, and nobody really cared about it. And then it took 2 years for people to really recognize there was a problem, to understand the metrics, to have enough people on board that it started to get some traction. I'm back at that step right now with my new company, Paceto, where I'm talking about a problem, the way that companies, collect, track, analyze, use their data. It's a big problem, but most people don't recognize it yet. And I'm aware that it's going to take 12, 18, 24 months, again, in that cycle for people to really understand that there's an issue here and realize that there's a better way to approach it. And so I'll continue to talk through and describe the issues that are seen in real life and the patterns. We're going to continue to present the things that we're working on with like a handful. At Paceto, we have 6 customers right now, right? So we have a small group of customers. We're proving out these concepts. I'm going to share the wins that we're getting and things like that. Do we have it all figured out? No, but the fun part is that nobody has it figured out right now. And so we get to collaborate, we get to try things, we get to share stuff. It's clear that there is a huge issue. It's clear that this issue needs solving in order for companies to operate in an efficient growth engine and scalable business models, especially in the B2B tech space. And so there's going to be careers that are made this way. There's going to be a lot of money made from software companies and consulting firms and operations firms. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening around the idea of data tracking and signal-based selling. So with all that said, I hope that gets us excited. I think this is it's clear there's a lot of momentum in the market around this, and the momentum is justified, that there's a big issue and this is a movement in the right direction. So I hope people get fired up about this opportunity. And would love to get into questions and go wherever. If we're going to go tactical and say, okay, Chris, like how are we actually going to do this? Maybe Sidney, you can pull up some slides because I don't have it available. And I think some visuals could help some people. So we'll see where it all takes us, but appreciate you all being here. This is something that I'm fired up about, especially this connection, this realization that the signal is what dictates the right time. When we think about like reaching out to the right person, right fit, right time, right message, we think about personalization and things like that. It's actually not about personalization. It's about reaching out at the right time based on the signal. So fired up about it. Let's get into some questions. Appreciate like the people that are looking to dig deeper, like challenge me, push me to try and explain this more clearly. So if there's things that you don't get, definitely do that. Challenge me. Hey, like if there's a way that you're seeing it that's different, like let's use this as a learning and brainstorming opportunity for everybody.
Awesome. The chat has been blowing up. So I think a lot of people are passionate about this as well. So the first question, Grant had to drop off for another meeting, but I'm going to read this first. He says, I'm already seeing many sales and sales development teams using signals to know what and when to do outreach. Are you seeing this missing often?
It's not about using the signals. Most SDR teams and sales teams are using signals. It's not about using the signals. It's about tracking them against pipeline and revenue. That's what's missing. And so what happens right now is some software platform over here says, these accounts are in market. And then the SDR manually goes over to ZoomInfo, tries to find some contacts in ZoomInfo that match the job titles, dump them in an outreach sequence that has no data around where they actually came from or something like that in the naming convention, and it's a total black hole downstream about meeting book, qualified opportunity, close one revenue, et cetera. So there's a commitment to using the signals, and every software platform out there right now is focused on giving you signals. And at Paceto, we're focused on measuring the signals that you're given to make sure that you make the right decisions. And nobody really is focused on the measurement part of it specifically, which I actually think is the root of the issue. There's plenty of signals out there: ABM, third-party intent data, first-party intent data, second-party intent data from contacts, MQL scores, PQL scores, MQAs, cold list pull from Zoom Info, user gems. There's signals everywhere. And so we have to be able to have a method to make sense of them. And right now, it's just a bunch of people going rogue, looking for stuff, trying to find a diamond in the rough. And we just need to be a lot more data-driven about how we dictate the actions that are taken and why we take them, especially at the level of like AE and SDR. I think a lot more of that needs to be data-driven and programmed about how those people go about their day, who they're targeting, what they're doing, and why.
Yeah, typically, I'll just add on a little nugget there, but typically what we see when we audit companies is they can track AE source and BDR sourced leads and opportunities and things like that, but they have no idea what drove them to reach out. What was the quality of that signal? Was it a job change from a technology platform? Was it something they saw on LinkedIn? Was it a G2 intent signal that came over? They have no idea. So then they're paying for all this intent and they're paying for all these tools, and they have no idea what's working and what's not. They can just report on the number of people and cadences, the number of meeting booked, and who booked them, and the outcome of that. So there's no granularity like you see in the marketing side on like source detail, campaign detail, things like that.
The black hole of outbound.
Yes. I'm going to bring Tom on. He is actually in the middle of trying to set this up himself and wants to discuss it with you.
Let's jam.
Yeah, I'm right in the middle of this right now, and this is so timely. We first started with trying to get the signals all in one place. So, as you say, loads of signals: G2, there's LinkedIn ad data, there's whatever's in your CRM and Salesforce already, and then any anonymous web visits. So we've consolidated them and got them into one place.
Where'd you store them? Where do you put them?
Do you want me to do the plug? I mean, it's actually Dream Data we're using at the moment to bring into one place. It's we solved it through we bought the platform for a different use case, but actually it did what we were doing very manually in spreadsheets, and just allowed us to kind of consolidate all of that. So
this is a great point. Yeah, I just want to. So like Dream Data used to be a multi-touch. There still are a multi-touch attribution platform. Okay. And what are they actually doing is they're just measuring a ton of discrete signals over time. People are starting to adopt it as a signal tracker and a signal aggregator instead of a multi-touch attribution platform. And I am challenging the entire world in multi-touch attribution about, are we even using this data in the right way by looking at this string of data and trying and divide credit around it. I think that actually the signal tracking that then drives the action that then looks at the data against the signals is a far better use case for that technology if you think about Visible or Dream Data or others. But just be careful, because a lot of those platforms aren't going to push data back into Salesforce, and that is a huge no-no. We need that data in Salesforce, and most companies aren't, because once they push it back into Salesforce, their platform is not so valuable. Their usage metrics are going to go down, so they are very incentivized to keep you on their platform and not push the data back into Salesforce. Right now, I think Visible and Full Circle are two that become like a good solution. If you believe in the idea that all of the important go-to-market data should live in Salesforce, which I believe wholeheartedly, then you would just be careful about using providers that don't support that.
Believe the same thing, Chris. Definitely. I think it was a side use case that helped us solve that.
Yeah, it's
issue.
A great
but
innovation, a great use of the tool. For sure.
But then the challenges that you suggest that are also there, right? So then how do you track what gets, even if you put like a lead source at the opportunity level that says outbound with X signal or outbound from the platform, how do you track that all the way through? Because then when you start using the outreach tools, your sales loss, your outreach, a lot of the cadences aren't canned, and then you've got to tag them in the right way. You've got to have a taxonomy or an infrastructure there, so that the sales team, when loading them, can then connect that background, and then you can connect it via CRM. So that's some of the challenges I see. It's we're getting good feedback from the SDRs and the sales team saying, hey, this is good stuff, but then quantifying the
Can't track
impact
it.
of that
Yeah.
is still a gap. It's definitely one of the bigger challenges.
Yeah. So I'm kind of brainstorming with you here. We don't have a full solution, but let's just kind of talk through it, and other people might have some ideas sparked as well. So let's just look at an ABM platform one, because they're like a major provider of a bunch of variety of intent data, and then you can like basically program it. And what they tell their customer to do is like, if the account reaches this criteria, then go out and get these contacts and then push these contacts into an outreach sequence. And it also has the capability to push that data into Salesforce. ABM platforms support that, which is a part that I like about them. And so you could take the signals and then push that data simultaneously to Salesforce to create a signal record, right? So there's a trigger that creates a signal record, and then simultaneously those contacts are going into outreach, sales loft, whatever way you're managing sales automation and sales outreach. And then from there, you have the signal created, and then you just have the attachment between the contact and the signal. And then you have the account data, and then all the other stuff can follow through. The real solution is that you need an object or a new way to collect all the information that is based on the signal, not the leader, the contact, or the opportunity. For any time where you have a recurring journey, it's just not going to work with the standard Salesforce objects. And I know there's so many people out there that are like, fuck custom objects. I got burned by it one time. Many companies just can't even, if you're in the marketing department, just can't get anything done in Salesforce because it's so bureaucratic and like slowed down at big companies. And so it becomes a real holdup for such a simple, like, it doesn't impact any operational workflows. The purpose is purely to collect data for reporting. It doesn't touch anything. Nobody knows it's in there. And so sort of just like thinking about how to frame it so that all it's doing is just grabbing data that you already have and putting it in the right place becomes you're not going to be able to replicate this at a level that really works or makes sense using the standard Salesforce objects. It's just not going to work. And then when it comes to those, like, eventually, like, maybe the platforms, any platform that's trying to be a signal aggregator will be forced to push that data into Salesforce. Like, and there's a million SaaS platforms that are going to be competing in that space. Dream Data sort of just made a pivot to add that, but there are a ton of upstarts that are trying to collect all those signals into one platform. And then the winner of that movement will be forced to push the data into Salesforce to actually track the impact of that so their customers can optimize. And so I think this will get solved in the next 6 to 9 months by a vendor. And then once it's pushed into Salesforce, then you just need the architecture inside of your CRM to actually process and read it, which is part of what we're doing at Paceto, and then partnering with CS2 as a leading ops firm to actually like go and get the technicals done and hook everything up. So yeah, that's until you have the data, like, you basically have to take it, and it's going to be interesting to see whether you're going to have 5 platforms that all push data into Salesforce that's then tracked, or if the data gets aggregated at the SaaS platform level before it pushes in. Like, we'll see. The long term is definitely aggregate and then at one platform writing to Salesforce. That's obviously the ideal, but I think it'll be very fragmented at the beginning.
Okay, we've got another challenge to that, but it's one for tomorrow. One for tomorrow, Chris, because there's a CRM move at some point, and then therefore it throws into the mix where you might want to hold the data centrally.
What do you mean?
In the long term, we're likely to move off of the platform that you mentioned in time for reasons outside of control.
Understood.
So it's that's the other way up that comes into the mix, but it's more of a mid to long term thing. Doesn't stop us doing what we need to do now, but it's definitely what you say. It's who's gonna solve that bit in the middle, and you push it all to Salesforce, or is there going to be a suitable aggregator? Because your points around some like the Dream Datas and Clear Bits and some of these others that produce good signals, they're also not the solve for what we're talking about here, and tracking it all the way through, right?
And then like just every company tries to solve the issue that their CRM data is not strong or not comprehensive or not complete or not put in the right ways with another tool. They try and install a tool and then push data into a bad data structure. And companies must realize that if you want to move in this direction, not only account-based, but also in signal-based, that the core architecture that you use with lead, contact, opportunity, accounts, campaign members and stuff like that is entirely insufficient for this. And so to really to hammer home that point, companies that want to adopt this and want to be able to measure it, like I wish that I was like the leader of signal-based selling out there, like rah, 'cause it's a great category and it's picking up traction, but I'm not. I'm actually came in from a very different perspective, as we need to measure all this stuff. And then we came to the same conclusion that signals is the way to look at it. And everyone else is focused on, just like for Tom said, how do we collect these signals so that sales can take action against them and we can charge a SaaS subscription to sales. And then what we're focused on is how are you going to actually measure them? It's something that I just see almost no like marketing and go-to-market leaders recognize yet, that the CRM data and the architecture is actually the core problem. And trying to communicate that point, that solving that is the number one priority, not buying another tool, not going out and switching from demand-based to 6sense, not buying a signal aggregator. All that stuff is nice at the top, but if we can't measure it and we can't make decisions against it because our CRM data sucks, then in a year, we're going to spend couple $100,000 on a new tool and really have no idea on the impact, except for did our pipeline and revenue go up, which is not a good way to evaluate whether an expensive tool like that is being deployed and used.
All
Thanks,
right.
Tom. Great discussion. Interested to see what you keep finding on that. That was the first use case I heard from multi-touch attribution, actually switching to like signal tracking like it.
Yeah, we honestly don't have it's not a priority for us to be looking at multi-touch attribution through that. Actually, there's other things we're looking to solve, including that, but it's definitely not the main use case.
Yeah.
Another thing to add is a lot of these signal aggregators or signal providers are not incentivized to measure all of the signals together and learn which ones are most effective for your specific business and your specific use case, which is why you might want to have this in your own data warehouse and CRM.
Each different signal provider, what their job is to prove to you why their signal works. And so when you use the same tool that is supposed to help you get revenue and then use the same tool to measure the success of that, you must realize that the analytics around that tool are biased and narrow-minded to just their specific use case or what you're trying to provide. And you must have an underlying structure to evaluate all the signals and all the vendors and all the providers holistically. Content syndication, software advice, third-party intent data, ABM intent data, second-party, partner, content download, website, cold list pull. There's user gems. There's going to be 100 signal aggregators, what Dream Data is doing, and they're all going to be competing to try and prove to you why their signal works. Not that it works better than all the other ones, just that their signal works so you keep buying their SaaS subscription. And so it's such an important point, Sidney. And it's the same thing, like companies use their agency to grow pipeline and then use the same agency to report on the success of those investments. And we should really have a separation between the vendors and people that are used to take action, and then have separate unbiased vendors that are focused on measuring the success of all of those things holistically. I think that most companies, like if you're trying to evaluate the success of your demand-based or ABM or demand-based or 6sense purchase, that most of the ways that you communicate the ROI of those tools is based on the metrics that those platforms provide to you, which are undoubtedly biased to show their platform is performing. And so just being aware of that distinction, I think, is also a really critical component.
All right, we're getting back into the questions because we've got a bunch of people lined up. So Nancy, you're on first, and then I'm coming to you, David.
Okay, thanks. As always, it's a really rich conversation here. So I just want to take a moment to summarize what I think I heard and correct me if I misunderstood. First of all, you said, based on your experience, the 70-30 rule, maybe some companies, 70% of their leads are sales generated. And some of them are now converting to signal-based. But I want to make sure what I'm understanding is your problem with, even though people are switching to signal-based, all they're really doing is a SDR is going out there on LinkedIn and noticing somebody has a job title change, he will enter the name of the person, maybe email or something, but that's it. What he fails to do is he doesn't document the sales source of the signal. And because he doesn't document it, therefore, on the back end, you can measure the effectiveness of that effort. Is that what you're saying? And if that's what you're saying, it's just a matter of asking or mandating sales to always document where did you extract your signal from, enter it into the CRM. Is that too simple a way?
I think that having the sales rep manually put it in would be like a rudimentary and ineffective way to get it done. I think my belief is that all this should be automated. We shouldn't ask our SDR to do 5 extra minutes of admin work when we can collect this all automatically without them even touching or knowing it. And so I'm just pushing as a first revision, like, sure, companies could have the sales rep enter it and waste 2 minutes of their day for every time they reach out to somebody to put that information in. And then they're probably not going to put the right information in or do it very accurately or stuff like that. And so you're going to be using less than ideal data because they don't really care about the tracking. And companies have tried this and come to this conclusion that trying to get sales SDRs to do this, they just don't really care. They don't really care about the data. It's just another task they have to do for marketing, and they're not going to do it. Or they're going to put in bad stuff if it's required. And so my position is that we should never ask our human capital resources to do things that are automated when we're doing them at scale, and therefore should have the infrastructure in place, which is entirely possible to be able to measure the signal independently. And then if the salesperson ends up taking action, then the signal and the person get connected and the whole thing tracks. So,
okay, but do you see that today, most companies that are still pushing this sales, please source, you're responsible for sourcing some percentage of the lead, when they push that philosophy, that in fact, it's not neatly, they don't have multiple resources automated to land in the SDR's work bucket. They do expect the SDRs to be combing through LinkedIn for job changes and
ton of random stuff. Yeah, just random things. Here, here's our last 20 close lost opportunities from a quarter ago. Go get them, SDR, and then make sure you check LinkedIn. If anyone likes our company posts and they match these things, like, make sure that you reach out to them. And so each individual person is just doing a bunch of random shit that's not tracked. And then they attribute the success of, they look at, look at Jimmy, this SDR got 9 meetings last month, and look at, John only got 2 meetings. It means that John sucks. And what it actually means is that Jimmy's figured out what the right signals are and John hasn't. And so that's real. To me, that's really what it comes down to. People always especially in sales, they try to measure it on the person's talent, and they do not take into account all the other factors: account fit, the right time, the right message, all these other things that impact the success. They just think, oh, Jimmy's so talented, that's why he got 9 meetings. He must be doing the right things. Oh, shit, it must be what he's saying on the gong call. Let's listen to those recordings. And it's just like, no one has really recognized in the data that actually the intent signal is what matters the most. If you're the shittiest SDR and you stink and you don't follow up fast, following up on a qualified account that submitted a demo request, you will have more success than the most talented SDR that's following up with a cold lead. And so the intent of the buyer dramatically matters. And I would say it's more than the talent of an individual SDR. And so it's just about thinking about that. Yeah.
Okay, so that's really clear. But do you agree, until people move to the practice that you're an advocate of, how they're getting by is doing this random stuff. And
yep.
Manually look for intense signals. And so the minimum they can do is probably just enter where that random thing came from. That will elite and enter that in your CRM.
They could try. That'll be something that people try. It'll be just like the marketing data maturity curve, okay? So like even today, there are companies that are developed, mature companies that have no idea what the impact of any of their dollars are. Sure, they bought tools, but when they put together their reports and they analyze it, they really have no idea. And there's other companies that have the most rigorous, intense data. They can forecast really specifically down to the individual segment and the intent. And they have tons of stuff figured out that gives them a long-term advantage in their business. And every company will need to make that same decision. So you'll see in 10 years, some companies still not tracking the signals. And you'll see some companies that lean into it that have it really figured out this year. And it'll just be, again, an evolution of these things where the early adopters will move on it. They'll feel a dramatic impact, and it'll be the basic like innovator's dilemma type of curve.
All right. Thanks, Nancy. We're bringing on David, and I've got 4 more in the queue. So we've got
Let's roll.
a lot of
Love it.
questions here.
Hi, Chris. Hello, everyone. I'm noticing some parallels in what you're talking about here today and a bit in what you were writing about today with B2C marketing starting in the 90s. This notion of trying to bring the data together so you can take the right action at the right time in the right channel with the right offer. And a lot of B2C companies had started on this journey in the late 90s. It's an outgrowth of their earlier work with marketing data warehouses. Now, I remember this because I was doing marketing of data warehouses, and I know that most data warehouses that we were applying and helping our customers create were being used for marketing purposes. And I also helped market campaign management tools specifically to the largest B2C enterprises so that they could do exactly this. And it comes down to be a data. So I'm offering the idea to explore, I guess, that there's a lot of parallels to what B2C companies have done in their history doing this to what you're proposing. And it's a question of scale. It's a question of having enough data inputs to make it forecastable. And what these B2C firms were doing is they were creating these data warehouses, and they didn't have a sales force, but they had other tools they were using to do analysis, and they had dedicated tools to do on-the-fly analysis as a new signal came in. And as that new signal came in, they would compute whether there is an offer that's appropriate based on that signal and so forth. So not to go into the whole history of that, but the reason I bring it up is because so much of the solving of this problem becomes around the data model, as you've been kind of suggesting. Mm-hmm. And it might not be that Salesforce may not actually have the data model to do what you're hoping for, is what I'm going to suggest. It may be that we need a different data model than Salesforce provides, and that we push into Salesforce those signals that are relevant to the users of Salesforce. Because there are users of other systems that may not be in Salesforce that have customer facing, customer touching, and customer input roles. So I'm kind of elevating the overall discussion. And what you're describing here, I don't think is going to be appropriate, my personal take, for companies that are really just starting out. They can certainly try and move in this direction and think along these lines, and that's absolutely appropriate. But they may not have the scale to have enough signals to make the signals differentiatable, if you will, beyond demo requests, contact requests, pricing requests, which we know are very loud signals, okay?
Yep.
And some of the more subtle signals, as they kind of accumulate, you may not be able to get them unless you've got thousands of records to kind of like put into the system to kind of do this analysis. So I don't mean to be on a soapbox, but I guess there are people who have written about this for decades. One guy is David Raab, R-A-A-B. He's deep-seated in this. If you've heard the term customer data platform, or CDPs, that's what this is all about. CDPs are essentially the exact same thing as a data warehouse that used to exist on-prem, that the largest enterprises had, but now it's in the cloud. And instead of taking 2 days to do certain processing, it's done much faster. So it's the same problem, the same goal, but the computing capability has moved to a different platform and is resolved quicker. So as you think about this and as you bring your thinking to this, I guess I'm just sharing for everyone, there's a lot to be learned from the B2C world, who have forever been doing this, right message, right time, right channel, right offer kind of activity, and where they're consolidating lots of different touch points from lots of different there's a lot of that kind of conversation. So anyway, that's just an observation to dovetail into what you were saying. But it really does come down to the data model, the data schema,
Sure does.
and to go back in time. The company I was working for, part of the reason they bought our software is because we brought a data model that helped make sense of it all for them. And that data model was actually underlying and necessary to be able to support the applications afterwards. So just wanted to share those thoughts as you're diving into this.
Yeah, tons of thoughts. There's a great parallel. And most of the things that that happen in B2B have already happened in B2C. So I appreciate the call out. I'm going to do some more research on it, but my first off the bat is that the CDP is really necessary to support a B2C omni-channel strategy where you have retailers and distributors and e-com and direct and all these different data sources where it makes a lot of sense. Almost all B2B companies are not like that. And so I'm not sure, but I'm going to spend some more time on the nuances there. We have seriously evaluated the idea that, okay, forget the Salesforce implementation. We'll just pull the data out like everybody else does, and then we'll be able to manipulate it and connect data sources and be able to figure stuff out. And the reality is it doesn't work because they don't collect the data in the first place, or they collect it in a way where they're mixing demo requests and LinkedIn ads into the same thing, when a demo request is an action the buyer takes, a signal, and the LinkedIn ad is not. It's a channel. And they mix these things together so the data is not actually usable, or if it is used, it's used in the wrong way. And so our conclusion is that, yes, you're going to be able to pull the data out and combine it with other stuff like financial data and Google Analytics and whatever other shit people come up with, and you're going to have a centralized repository that lives outside of the CRM, but it's not going to work until you fix the CRM data. And so everybody that's trying the BI route and things like that, they just don't recognize, and we're actually building this, they don't recognize how many holes exist in their data. People don't, we survey people and we ask them, what's your confidence in the data? How accurate is your data? How do you collect it? You see varying results across, depending on what role someone's in, RevOps, CMO, other executive like the CFO, you'll see different answers. And they don't realize that these problems actually exist in the data right now. So we're creating a way where we'll be able to flag all the issues that exist in the data right now so that people have a list of all the things they need to fix.
This approach that you're taking is going to be easier to conceive of and to leverage if you're working with the Oracles, the Accentures of the world, because they've got the large enough data sets. And importantly, they have many different touch points. I guess the one thing I'd like to add into the conversation is each constituent who's talking to a customer, right, has their typical interface and technology that they leverage. The direct mail team uses particular tools. The telephone team uses particular tools. The customer service team uses particular tools. The distributors use particular tools. And so what I'm trying to suggest is not all of those tools or all those users are natural members of the Salesforce.com community. They've got their own tools. And
Loud
so
and clear.
If all right, that's the idea. So if you had the centralized database that pushed out the relevant data to the relevant tool for the relevant purpose of the relevant user, right? As opposed to we all see all the data. Because I'm making phone calls. I don't really need to know about some of these other things that are not because part of the outreach is what channel. If part of the outreach is what channel, this becomes part of the issue. Anyway, so
yeah,
I don't want to be confusing myself and confusing anyone listening to me.
Give people the right data they need.
Give them the right data into the system that they're already using, rather than forcing them to come to Salesforce, which may not have the data model to support their use case.
Exactly. Salesforce is the brain that has the things that are important. My belief is that anything that's important in your go-to-market that you're going to report on needs to be in the CRM, and then that all the data that lives there can push out into BI, integrate into other tools that get displayed into their analytics for Sendoso or something like that. All that stuff exists from there, but we have to have a commitment to if the CRM data isn't right, then there's no chance that everyone's looking at the same thing in the peripheral tools.
Well, it's a two-way street.
It is.
At each tool level, you have to capture the right signals to be able to feed them into something potentially centrally, to be able to draw analysis across channels, right? So that's one part of the problem. And then the other part of the problem is then taking those signals and pushing them out to the relevant enablers, if you or
executors, the people that take action. Yeah.
Who take action based on the signals, right? Whether it's a system or a person, whether it's a this or that kind of a channel. So all I'm suggesting is Salesforce is a very powerful and very useful, especially in our B2B world, data repository and master kind of truth for us, but it doesn't necessarily capture all the signals from all of the places that they could exist, is what I'm trying to get at. And that the other places where they could exist, especially if you're in a bigger company, when you're in a small startup, Salesforce is already huge and perfect. And I'm not here to complain about that, though you may not have enough data to make the vision that you're trying to pull together statistically significant in some capacity. Anyway, that's
totally get it.
I don't want to belay the problem, the point, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, David. I always appreciate your thoughts. All right, Sidney, let's see if we can get all three of the other ones in here. Go rapid fire.
All right.
No rush for
There we go. So this is from Anna. She can't come on audio, so I'm going to read this for her. How can I, as a VP of growth, owning the ABM strategy for sales and marketing, bring in success, I'm assuming customer success counterpart and their team into ABM?
I think first off would be defining what are the goals of your ABM program. Would be my first recommendation. And those goals might lead you to involve customer success and that type of stuff. And it may not. And so I think it's always like, and when you hear like ABM, like the first things that I think that we need to do is select and tier our accounts, put that data inside of some place so everybody in the company agrees to it, set the objectives around ABM, which might include a cross-sell and expansion target. And if it includes a cross-sell and expansion, then yeah, we need AM and CS. And you're running an integrated motion between marketing and AM and CS, just like you run an integration with marketing and sales to get new customers. And so I think it's about deciding what is the actual goal of the ABM program and not boiling the ocean around it. Not trying to say, okay, we're going to do ABM, let's do strategic tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, all net new acquisition, then let's do all the tiers, expansion and cross-sell, and for our 3 product lines, and then you just set the whole thing up for failure. So I would recommend picking what is the goal of our ABM program first. Is it to expand and cross-sell, or is it to drive pipeline and new customers? When you make that distinction, then you decide whether sales and SDRs are going to be the main counterpart, or customer success and things like that are going to be. So I would make that distinction first. I would make sure that all the accounts are tiered, both current customers and net new or new prospects, that you have tiers of those accounts, and that the tactics that you use are not only relegated to tier 1 or strategic. ABM is all of your accounts. You just spend less money and you do more scalable one-to-many things for accounts that aren't as valuable to you. And so ABM is not something that sits over in the corner where our top 50 accounts, we're going to run ABM against it. ABM is a strategy of tiering all of the accounts that we can sell to and then investing appropriate amounts to acquire them based on how valuable they are. And having different streams of motions and investments that happen for tier 3 and tier 1 and tier 2. And you have different teams and investments and channels and things involved. And then if you look in the analytics from pipeline sources and sales velocity, that by tier or by segment, there will be very different go-to-market motions that those tiers of accounts flow through based on their size and their buying process and how you market and sell to them. And so to me, that's sort of like the overview on ABM. And then it depends, like another way to think about this is like social proof and customer stories and customer success. But I think that normally comes from product marketing or like brand content, not necessarily customer success. So that wouldn't be relevant to the question, I don't think.
Awesome. We're going to go back into signals and bring Mike on.
Thanks, Sidney. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Mike.
So I come to these calls with a slightly different experience set than I think a lot of your attendees do. I love these calls, by the way. I've been a sales leader and a go-to-market leader for the last 20 years. And I've always been aligned with my marketing departments, weekly meetings, daily meetings, et cetera. I do have a marketing by education as well. Love discipline. I've never worked at a company nor consulted with a company in my career that thought their SFDC implementation was well done or was supporting the needs of the business currently ever. And so I'm wondering and I'm 100% in agreement that the next wave is the signal-based B2B selling motion. It's the only way we can tackle the next phase. ABM, I agree with you as well. ABM was second, and very few people pulled it off. So if we were in a perfect world and you could effortlessly migrate to a CRM, and it could be one of the heaviest lifts that any organization will take now, are there any CRMs that you feel like right now have the underlying data model that can support signal-based selling so that you can find that unified point of truth with customer information and aggregate it together and facilitate it? Is there anybody out there that's doing it well right now?
The answer is currently no. I think that the company that will get to it first is actually HubSpot. They've already made strides in how they use their lead object. I will encourage them both now and when I speak to the partner people to rename it to Signal. They already have a lead object that supports constant journeys that go through, which is what a custom object would do inside of Salesforce. But there's going to be apps inside of Salesforce. What we're actually aiming for and why Salesforce implementations are unsatisfactory to almost every company is because every company manually reinvents the wheel in their CRM all the time. That there's no core architecture that you come in, click 3 buttons, install, and then all of a sudden you're 90% of the way there, and then you layer on the customization on top of it. That's what we're building for Salesforce. That a net new install, and you would do 10, 12, 15 months of manual ops work that would be done in 30 seconds because all of the decisions have already been made around the core architecture, just like your P&L, your expenses and how you categorize the GL codes and how you present the balance sheet. All that stuff's already been figured out and every company replicates it. So why don't we do the same thing in go-to-market data? I think that's what we're going for. That's why the implementations, and then as the gap accounting principles in finance or other things improve, that those software platforms and infrastructure automatically update so that companies continuously operate on the best practice. Where when it comes to Salesforce right now, it's the responsibility of your ops team to try and manually stitch together a bunch of stuff to try and keep you up to best practice. It leads to a ton of debt, tech debt and stuff like that. So if you look at the root, it's actually about how Salesforce is planned, built, and managed, which is why it doesn't why they're getting unsatisfactory results. I mean, we need having a core architecture, and it's no fault, but the Gartners and the Serious Decisions make a pretty picture of a graph. They talk about it, and then downstream, nobody knows how to implement it inside of Salesforce, and it all turns into a fucking mess. And so we need to be able to connect the operating model, the data model that happens inside of Salesforce, and the analytics in a vertical integration so that when you have the operating model, if Serious Decisions was doing it, they should have a operating model, which they do. They should have a clear Salesforce or CRM architecture, which they do not have. And they should have a clear, repeatable method for analytics, which they do not have. And so it's just this fragmented view of someone builds the operating model, then everyone tries to guess about how the implementation should go in Salesforce and fend for themselves. And then all these analytics vendors at the bottom try to take this bad data and make sense of it. And what we're building as Paceto is basically the full stack of that operating model and then the CRM data model and then the purpose-built analytics that know what data is going to be there and then how to interpret it.
So Chris, what I'm hearing then is that SFDC might be the only platform, in your opinion, that has the flexibility and the robustness to pull it off. It's really a question of implementing it correctly from the beginning, because maybe no other platform has the ability to drive those 3 areas of the model through a particular and a single point. It's just a matter of really understanding the end goal and all of the places where you have to implement correctly. But if I look to other applications, I might have a deficiency in the flexibility of those applications to actually pull it off correctly. Am I hearing that right? It's like Salesforce is done poorly most often because people don't know how to do it. But of all the tools out there, if you're going to do it right, Salesforce may be the only place to do it right.
I don't want to say the only place because I'm sure that you could put it together in HubSpot. When I talked about HubSpot being the first there, I mean natively available. You buy HubSpot and, just like you have a lead and a deal object in HubSpot, you also have a signal object. I don't think Salesforce is ever going to do that. Maybe they will, but I'm not sure that they will. It's going to rely on custom applications and ops and custom work and that whole ecosystem inside of Salesforce. I think that HubSpot has a real shot to make it work natively. But both of them are at least 6 months away. And then there's, Active Campaign and Oracle and SAP and all these peripheral CRMs. But the companies that use those CRMs have different problems than the CRM is a great indicator of what the company is like. It's a great indicator of if you use Dynamics versus Salesforce. You can tell the difference of what the company is like before you even talk to them based on what CRM they use. HubSpot sales CRM users are earlier stage, don't really take their data seriously. There's like core things that it's comprehensive or like consistent pattern of people that use HubSpot. Salesforce CRM users are people that are playing to fucking win. They know that they need it. It's very flexible. It has the largest ecosystem. They're typically more mature. They care more about their data. They use it. They have more ops resources, things like that. Companies that use Dynamics are typically also use Teams, are big political, are probably in the Microsoft ecosystem and got forced to use all the Microsoft suites, so they don't even want to, but they're doing it because Microsoft sends them business. And there's just patterns of what CRM you use and then what it's like at your company that I've been able to notice over the past 5 years. So I just think that companies that use HubSpot, like CRM as a sales tool, are going to will grow up to Salesforce CRM unless HubSpot continues to make significant moves in their product. But I still don't think they're really comparable yet.
Awesome. We are 2 minutes over. We have some more questions that we can save them for next week.
I know we gotta, David. Remember when back in the day we would book an hour for Demand Gen Live, and then we'd be at 8:30 and be like, forget it, let's go for another hour. We need to figure out how to make that happen here. Like have a 30-minute overflow. So if the conversation's going, other people that want to stay can stay. Let's figure out how to maybe just block 90 minutes from now on, so that it's on my calendar. And then if we want to overflow, we can.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Sidney.
Hello.
Love the stuff you're doing. Great format. I'm trying to keep up with you guys around this signal things, but you move at a very fast pace. So much appreciated. A little bit of background, probably quite similar to what Mike just said. I think I've been leaning more on the marketing leg in both positions. Have a marketing background, so most of your marketing leaders roles. So just want to quickly check with you some of the fundamentals that I really like about this signals idea. Is that, to me, it holds a bit of a promise to really break down the barriers between sales and marketing, the siloed approach or the linear approach between marketing and sales. I think traditionally it's been extremely convenient for leaders saying the left side of the funnel's for marketing, so we'll fire those guys if we don't get enough leads. And if sales doesn't generate enough revenue, we'll fire the salespeople. In reality, the customers don't care, so I don't think we should care, right? So we should, as a company, ideally be completely agnostic as to who serves the customer at which stage, whatever brings the most value. And I think some of the attempts that have been made and says, okay, let's throw everything away and just look at the bottom line revenue and divide that. But both marketing and sales still want to have more detailed, granular data to know where to spend their money on. And it feels like that Signals has the promise to do that. So yeah, looking forward to that. Is that what you're aiming for as well? Is that?
Yeah, and just to be clear, it's about integrating the teams together. We're not going to blow up the departments and we're not going to do any of that stuff. It's about putting the right pieces in place so that we incentivize teams to do the right behaviors, that we're able to measure that appropriately, that we're then able to lead people to the teams to work together by setting the right core KPIs across the departments that operate as an integrated team rather than the assembly line of the silos. That is a big one. And then the second part you mentioned about the signals having the promise to, what was it exactly?
They still hold the data that it's granular enough.
Yeah, thank you.
Manage and prioritize operational stuff, right? So not just look at the revenue at the end of the quarter and then try to figure out which of our activities generated the revenue. But so when the signal happens, treat it agnostically and just measure it. And then when you look back and want to improve your operations, then track back and see what signals had the most impact. And it's probably sort of a complicated analysis of multiple signals and difficult to figure out which of those signals had the most impact. But still, I think it starts with tracking, right?
Yeah, I mean, companies are like, okay, like fuck leads, forget like sales source versus marketing source. Let's just goal everyone on all pipeline. And then what happens? Like you get to the end and you either hit your pipeline target or you missed your pipeline target and you have no idea why. You have no underlying data or analytics to make any decisions about how to continuously improve or to fix something that isn't working. It's just not a solution. It's like a hope strategy that a lot of companies that sort of like got on the ABM train and were like, okay, it's all bound now. So let's just hope that we hit the pipeline target. Is just not going to work, especially like maybe it did in 2021 where everybody was exceeding their targets and things like that. It definitely doesn't work now when stuff gets back to normal, i.e. hard. And so having the data is incredibly important to be able to optimize the signals. And I think like just like companies sort of went on the account-based train and realized that like, wow, like the fit of the people that our sales team is talking to really matter. If we talk to better fit accounts, we're going to win more deals. They're going to be worth more. It'll take some time, but people will eventually realize the same thing that I've seen in like the late 2010s, that the intent signal the buyer sends is almost as important as the fit. And that pairing these two things together based on data really is like the solution that's going to give people the granularity to be able to make the right strategic decisions. And then lastly, recognizing that regardless of where the signal comes from, if the signal came from your website or a third party like aggregator or vendor or a partner or from inside of your product in a free trial, no matter where it comes from, SDRs are going to follow up. Marketing dollars have already been invested and sales needs to close it. And so like the idea of sourced, I think is just so outdated to support the assembly line of how companies used to operate. And it just prevents them from being in a way that they could work truly as an integrated team. And so we're working in our operating model to reset
I've always hated the term marketing sourced because it's assume some sort of competition of every dollar earned has to be either added to the bonus of sales or to marketing, and it cannot be both, right? So yeah,
it's just really.
But anyways, great stuff. Sorry to keep everybody.
all good. Really appreciate it. It becomes just it was a really easy way in like 2014 to scrutinize the marketing and the sales budget. And it just doesn't, as the world has evolved over the past 10 years, it just breaks now. It just doesn't make a lot of sense anymore. And so people are feeling that. That's clear. It's just about figuring out what's the actual solution or what's the best thing to do next, which is a lot of the brainstorming we did on this call, because I don't think that anyone has like the real solution yet. Thank you all for being here. Hope you have a great Tuesday, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks, everyone. See ya.